Hello, hello, and welcome. Happy Tuesday. This is another episode of Electricpreneur Secrets, the Electricians Podcast, where me and my esteemed partner, Joe, we come here 5 days a week to help you master sales, simplify your pricing, and deliver premium level electrical service. Today's not going to disappoint with this one, Joe. How are you doing, my friend?
I am doing phenomenal. Honestly, when we sat down together and we're like, what are we talking about today? And we just both came to the conclusion, it was like, yeah, I'm ready to get this out into the energy. Let's send it out.
Fireworks. Katy Perry.
Mhm.
Where is she? Let's get her on the show. Let's get Katy here. So here's the situation. A lot of times, guys, as you know, we got rid of all the fancy shit. There's no pre-scripting. We're not doing anything to help this conversation other than bringing ourselves, our recent experience, and the best knowledge we have on a subject to help you in your business, your electrical business. And today's no exception. We literally had a client this morning had a bit of a breakdown mid-presentation. Now, this is tough because we're coaching so many electricians to help them present 6 options, as you say, from the finest money could buy to the most economical we could offer. But it kind of makes everything look economical when your iPad or your app crashes midway through, Joe. Have you ever had this happen?
So I've never had the app that we use crash, but I have had the tablet die because I didn't charge it. Luckily,
Uh,
we've developed systems in place to prevent this from ever happening, which is why I really wanted to touch on this because I know that we can make sure it never happens again.
100%. I was going to do like the cough and say pre-arrival process, but if you're just going to touch on it without coughing, that's probably better for the
Go.
podcast.
Just freaking go, right?
Yeah.
So the thing that happened, just to speak from perspective, actually, do you mind bringing us up to speed? And because I know I'm going to monologue the majority. So tell us what happened with our client this morning.
Yeah, for sure. So, as I understand it, they worked hard through the process, right? Get it to design and presentation of options. They're
Mhm.
literally halfway through building these options, ready to present them. And I think they were using a CRM that crashed.
Yep.
Now, using that app on the iPad, of course, there's some inherent risk with that. And as we were just talking about in the live group, guys, if you're not in our Facebook community, there's additional chats and engagements that happen before every show and sometimes even a bit after. Now, in that conversation, we were talking about how no app's truly bulletproof. In
Correct.
fact, I've spoken to some pretty high level web developers before who do tell me that most of the internet's just sticks and duct tape. It's
It's
not as
just
secure as
patchwork.
we think. Right now, someone could be hacking in and beaming us up somewhere else. So I have no idea, but I imagine that's exactly how guys get caught on Zoom meetings with no clothes on and whatever else is happening in their office, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard some crazy stories of things like what, not our clients, but I've heard of things in the passing, and it's fun to hear because you're like, you know what? Let them live their lives, but let's keep it professional if we can at the same time.
So bouncing back out of that rabbit hole, that's the situation as I understand it.
Mhm.
And it's unfortunate because this isn't even a situation where it's like, oh, okay, well, I forgot the charger. That's on me.
Mhm.
Or I didn't do XYZ correct. This is my fault. I mean,
Mhm.
we're advocates for ownership, accountability, and taking responsibility for everything in our power. And
Mhm.
sometimes, even with all the boxes checked, something just goes wrong, Joe.
But that's the thing. Not every box was checked, and I can
Mm,
explain why.
okay.
So, as you know, and as I'm sure everyone who's listening to me knows, I am a hyper process oriented person. If I do not follow a process, I could even forget to tie my shoes. Like, I love process. That's why we designed our process the way we did, because I had tried and tested different CRMs, different presenting softwares, using paper, using carbon copy, tried it all. The note section was the most reliable, and I'd like to explain why.
Mm, please.
So, when in doubt, when you're trying to design something, like whether you're tactical training, I mean, you want to know that this thing is going to survive, that in multiple applications, I can take this particular system out and it will work in numerous forms of engagement. So, to start with, we use the note section of every tablet. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. If you think about how low tech that no section is, you can't even insert graphics into it. Like you could probably run it off a Texas calculator. That's how low tech it is. But there's a reason for it. Its simplicity is its strength, because so many people think that the presentation needs to look fancy in order to be rock solid. It's
Mm.
actually different. The simpler it can be, the more reliable it will be. And the last thing we want is to happen to one of our clients where you're presenting something and it fails. So what we do is we always load to the note section of our tablet. The very first thing that we do is load that.
Can I insert a random fact here?
Oh, please go for it.
9 out of 10 electricians overcomplicate the sales process.
I can see that.
I made that up. I'm sorry, it's not actually factual, but it is now. That's real. 90% of us are out there overcomplicating this bit. In fact, most times when electricians come on board with us, we have to calmly persuade them out of perfectionism and into presenteeism. Come with us and just show up and just run the play as boring as possible, because success is boring. In fact, one of our early clients, Guillaume, who was on average 10, 15K months, hit his biggest month and his first platinum sale, which was over $30,000. And when he sent us a copy of the options, it was exactly that. It was a boring, even the background wasn't completely white. I think it was off white, that notepad color, right?
I love it. Love it.
But it sold. I'm sorry to derail you, but I had to throw that in there.
No, it's fine. And that's why I love these conversations, because they're conversations. Like we have no idea. You and I have no idea where these calls are going to go, but we're going to ride along with it as best we can. So back to my train of thought. Why the note section? It's so simple. And it's because it's simple, it's less likely to crash. But we actually have fail safes on top of that. So the first was using the note section and building it so it doesn't crash. Then once you've done it, you screenshot it without the numbers. Then you go back and you enter the numbers and you screenshot it again. Now there's a second benefit, because you have one note section, which means God forbid that crashed, you would now have a second. But in addition to it, we would always sync our iPads to the cloud, which meant every few hours, if not on the hour, that information that was in photos would automatically go to the daily folder. So I can simply go back to the day that I would have gone to the presentation, load up that day's pictures, and find them. So I could do that from my phone. I could do it from a tablet. I could use it from someone else's tablet.
From the office.
From the office. It was all interconnected.
Technology.
There's no fails. Yeah.
Incredible.
Technology.
Cloud options.
Cloud options. But the point is that it's not meant to seem flashy. Really, where the sale is made isn't in the presentation. The presentation should be almost like a cue card where you're reading it in a way that you understand what's being said, but not so clear that the customer can take a snapshot and send it to your competitor and they go, oh, I know exactly what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you know you've done it the right way. Make sense so far?
That. I do. Yeah. I think so. Absolutely. I like that a lot. And quite commonly, I've found that a lot of electricians in these situations, I mean, demand calls are really on my brain too, which, just to be clear, demand call, guys, something's wrong. We need something done today. It's pretty much in the hat. But most of us leave with a small ticket amount.
Yeah.
Because all we accomplish is exactly what they asked for when they asked for it. In fact, a lot of us might even go out for a diagnostics fee, solve a problem, and then realize, oh crap, I charged half an hour. I'm back to the shop, an hour's gone. I'm out money. But something you spoke to, and we're not going to get too deep into it on this episode. Maybe tomorrow we'll dive back into this. We've got some great demand call content this week, by the way. But point being, we get stuck in this tech brain and we'll tend to put things in this note section, in these options that no one can freaking understand except the competition. The only people that would understand it, in fact, if you had a direct screenshot to the next electrician down the road, he'd be like, oh, I could match that.
That's the thing. And that's why it's so dangerous, because As electricians, we have to acknowledge the reality that a lot of people live in. And that, why do most people not train electricians? Because for some reason, we've all accepted that we're willing to race to the bottom.
Hmm.
That needs to change. We need to be willing to say that we're going to help everyone to rise the tide. When we all succeed, we will all do better together. That doesn't mean feeding information to your competition, though. I want to serve. Good.
I just wanted to put a name to this. Now, keep in mind,
Mhm.
I am also an electrician. So let's take this with a grain of salt. But
Mhm.
here's where we've found ourselves, especially at this crossroad.
Mhm.
Electricians, us, we tend to become, at least at the beginning of this home service journey, basically like code regurgitating micro lawyer monkeys with meters and linesman
Mhm.
pliers.
Yes, literally. Did I ever tell you the time that a lawyer told me to be quiet because I was talking too much about my contracts?
No.
All right. Literally, that situation happened where when I was first in business, I thought that a contract, I don't even call it contracts anymore. It's paperwork. I call it paperwork. But at the time, I was like, let me review your contract with you just so that I can make sure that you understand everything that's going to be included and you have a clear get it. So I start reading through, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing this. This is the, I'm going through the whole list. And he's like, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm reviewing your contract prior to signing. He's like, I'm a lawyer. You think that if I didn't want to read this, I couldn't read it better than anything you have? He's like, I trust you. You're the electrician. I'm going to give you money. You're going to do the job really well. And then you don't have to worry about what the paperwork says.
It sounds like maybe your first sales coach, too.
Literally, he's actually still a friend to this day. It's
Nice.
funny. Like, I like learning from those that can correct me. And
Yeah.
I've said it before. I actually prefer being what I consider the dumbest person in the room. Not that I consider myself unintelligent, but if I'm surrounded with people who know more than me, the only way I can go is up. So literally, this lawyer was working with me and was like, why don't you just tell me what it does? Like, talk to me like I'm a 3-year-old. And then if I want to do it, I'll do it. I have the money. You don't need to sell me on it. I already need it done.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow. So the lesson I took away from that was, why don't we just shut up and let the person buy?
Yeah. One mouth, two ears, right?
Exactly.
I know that's been one of my biggest shifts in sales is when I put this little message to myself on every sales process. At this point, it says, hey, 2-minute max to
Mm-hmm.
explain what I'm offering. And part of
Mm.
that 2 minutes is, do you have any questions? Okay, we covered that part. Do you have any questions? Is everything clear there? Do you understand what that means?
I love
So the
it.
2 minutes isn't even my entire time. Every time ever in my life, looking back on it, reflecting on it truly, every
Mm-hmm.
time I've gone and overeducated someone, I've made them uncomfortable and then
Mm.
want to leave the room. The only
Agree.
people who are excited about those chats are other code regurgitating micro lawyer monkeys with meters and linesmen in their pocket. I
Oh
tried to say
man,
that the same twice. I'm not sure if I succeeded, but
it's close enough. It's
it's
close enough,
close.
so it works. But
Okay.
I have some other thoughts based on the original topic, which is
Yeah,
how can we help the presentation when it goes awry, right?
definitely. Let's hit it.
So we've already assumed that we now have the note section, which is low tech, the photo section, which is low tech, and the photos automatically loaded to the cloud. So let's assume that is all done. The next thing is we have a pre-arrival process because there are times when your iPad will die.
Mm,
It happens, right? Like no matter what you do, there is going to be one time, because it's happened to me several, where you thought you turned your iPad off and all you did was just hold it long enough for the screen to disappear. And then when you show up to the call, you have 2% battery. Now, without following our process, you'd be screwed. Or you'd be asking the customer to borrow their charger, or you'd be sitting in the van a little bit longer and plugging it into your, cigarette outlet.
yeah.
It's not going to work. So what we've done is we include every part of our process to have a actual charger with a pre-built whip to your cord. So literally I've got them in my desk right next to me, but the benefit is All you have to do is say, you know what? I'm going to come in with my presentation. I'm going to put this charger between my legs or to the left or right. I'm going to have the cord come directly up between my legs and touch the center of the wire. The reason why I have that done is so that it hides the cord as much as possible and continues to show that you are prepared, rather than having cords all over the desk and making it seem like you are taking advantage of their space.
Intention in every step, Joe. That's one of the things I love about you and this entire process that we teach.
Well, thank you. The thing is, there are some benefits to having the autistic brain, is that I need to know every part of the process and the why of everything needs to happen. Otherwise, it all unravels. Everything needs to be done with intention. But it can get even worse than this. Let's assume you did your note section. You loaded it to the clouds. You had your charger. I'm going to speak to everyone out here and say, have you ever had a situation where you're selling to one person and they're like, yes, I like it. I love it. I want some more of it. Here's the sign. I'll move forward with it.
Oh,
then,
Mr. Cyrus in the house.
I know, right? And then we have Cousin Eddie. Cousin Eddie walks through the door and says, what are you trying to sell my mother-in-law? What are you trying to sell I'm a contractor. I know all about this stuff. And they start shitting all over your presentation. What do we do?
Run for the hills. Throw your iPad down, say the app crashed, and walk out.
You know what? Sometimes it may feel like that's the only way to do it.
Right.
Because where we end up losing is in our intention. Now, we're communicating to one person, right? Our intention was to communicate great service. But we're speaking from a certain mindset. We're not speaking from the contractor mindset. Now, the contractor comes in, it requires a shift normally. And that shift will switch you to them, but alienate you from your customer. So there's a better way. The shift is to bring the contractor into the emotional. Now, he coming in arguing. What we need to do is come in with gratitude for his arguments. Eddie, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your insight on this. In all honesty, I get your concern and that a lot of people would probably be concerned about someone taking advantage of your mother. So believe it or not, you being a contractor is a huge asset. And I'd love if you'd sit down so I can describe exactly what we're doing so that you can give your input and you can be sure that she's getting the best value. Would you be willing to help me with that?
Yeah, of course.
What are the odds that this guy isn't already having his ego stroked at this point? Like, oh, you're right. I am a contractor. I do wear a cape. It's billowing in the wind wherever I walk. I can do anything.
I am the man.
I am the man. Yeah. Let's sit down together. I like this guy. He thinks I'm the man too.
Yeah. Awesome.
So as you're leading this contractor down, what side of the line are we supposed to be on with him? Well,
his side, with him, shoulder to shoulder, looking ahead at the problem, addressing it together.
So what I would often do is, because naturally we're sitting next to the customer. And so usually they're either on my right or on my left. I would stand up, walk to shake the person's hand, then come back and pull a chair so that they're both side by side. And if I had to be adjacent, so be it. Or if I had to be on the same line, that'd be better. But regardless, now they're looking at the problem together rather than I'm looking at the customer's looking at me, and the contractor's looking at me from behind. Because that will never work.
Definitely. Now, I'm also thinking, and maybe a bit on the devil's advocate side here, but
go for it.
Maybe mom doesn't want that help. Maybe mom's a bit embarrassed by this. So I feel like there's probably also a pull here, Joe, to say and address her and just say, hey, is it okay if we just get, what name did we use for this fellow again?
We used, it could be Eddie. It could be Cousin Eddie. It could be Ricky Bobby. It could
be okay if we just get Eddie caught up and then we'll resume from where we left off?
That's a fair way of doing it. And really, it's always best to read the room. So like, granted, I'm not great at social cues, but I've learned to pick up on certain things when it matters.
Right.
So let's say you walk into you're in the room, you're in presentation, you're talking to whoever the customer's name is, and Cousin Eddie walks in. The customer will shift their demeanor and position to accommodate the energy of the person walking into it.
Yeah.
If Eddie is high energy, she will regress and regress. If Eddie is low energy, it usually will stay the same. If he's neutral, it'll be as if he's never walked in the first place.
Right.
But we're ready to combat that high energy contractor. So when they come in after we've come in with the gratitude, we would then go, so Clay, if you wouldn't mind, I would love to have this person's opinion if you feel like it'd be valuable. But at the same time, I know this is your home with your project. How would you like me to proceed from here?
Yeah.
And just let it be up to her. Because if she says, well, I'd rather, it's my house, Eddie, I know what I'm doing. Or, yeah, I could see him being here. Either way, you want this person in. If you started with gratitude, it won't be awkward.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents on that.
Yep. Love it. Okay. Very cool. Is there anything further on disarming Eddie there then on that scenario?
Well, it depends on the situation that comes up, because Eddie could be combative. I have had some customers, like there are some situations where I remember we were called out to physically do a job where the lady had no power because there was 3 inches of water in the bottom of her panel. And when we went to do a full service change, the boyfriend called and the entire time was telling us that he's a contractor and what we're charging shouldn't be what he needs, and wants a full breakdown of everything. The problem is that we weren't getting them together. It was the boyfriend would call and I'd handle him, and then I'd be talking to the spouse right here. The solution always is getting them on the same frequency, in the same outline that you can. If they walk into the room, you're addressing the room. If they call on the phone, you put them on speakerphone. Those are the 2 outcomes. The person who makes a decision needs to be included in everything that's happening. And a lot of times, if they don't want that person involved, they'll either act embarrassed, which actually did happen. And if they do, you'll usually pick up on that. And if they don't, and they do want them in, well, then you're still acting in alignment of being on the right side. So either way, you're winning.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. So that's what happens when another entity comes into the situation. We've talked about an entity now, about technology failing you. Is there a third on this one, Joe? Is there another thing that would cause a distraction or a problem in your presentation?
Usually the only things that come up that come as a distraction would be you've already made your presentation, and then the customer says, oh, well, that's actually not a priority to us anymore. Where they change what it is that they've wanted to do. Now, that often happens when you have a laundry list of things, or if you had a 2-call close opportunity where you came back once, and then maybe a couple weeks later, you came back and something changed.
Yeah.
Luckily, our process already accounts for that as well. What we do is we have what's known as the pulse check step, where as we're going through and working with our client, we check. So I know it's been a few weeks since last we've talked about this. Has anything changed in our needs? Or I understand that you were going through, you provided us a full laundry list. And I remember we even took the time to prioritize it. Can we just review that before we get started, just to make sure that I'm only offering you something that makes sense? There are other questions that you can ask, but the point is, the sale is either happening to you or against you. The process allows you to go in line with the customer. No matter which way they flow, you're already a step ahead. And by being a step ahead, you can always manage to be on the same side of the line.
I love that. Well said, brother. Well said. All right, then let's crank out a couple of action items for these folks that are listening here to this today. Do you want the action? Do you want the all-star? Do you have anything in mind?
I can think of both, in all honesty, but Can we start off with action and we'll take it from there?
Let's go.
Okay. The bare minimum action that I need everyone to take who's listening is to order a backup charger. The reason why that's so important is I've never had the note section crash. Not in all the 10 years I've done it. I never had it crash, but I cannot tell you how many times the iPad died. That was a constant. That always happened. I don't know if it was just me forgetting to turn it off, but I know that battery charger saved my ass. So not only do I want you to buy a battery charger, but I strongly recommend buying a multi-connection whipcord. What that is it has a micro USB, it has an iPad, and it has a universal. So no matter what piece of device you need, like I had a battery powered flashlight, what's stopping you from plugging into that?
Yeah.
Nothing if you have a universal cord, your iPad, your phone, maybe you have an iPad and you run on an Android. So having a cord for whatever device you have is important.
Yep.
That's the bare minimum, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I hear the yawns when we talk about the pre-arrival stuff, like having a charger cord, and everyone likes to kind of live in complacency around that and really approach it with a reactive nature, just meaning that it's never a problem until it's their problem and it's in their lap, and learning that way. Well, you get to take it from Joe here. You get to take it from us in this experience. It will fail you at some point. Not being prepared, not having a second uniform, not having your equipment charged, not being prepared will fail you. And it'll be at the worst possible time when you're already invested in travel, in time, in sales process effort. And then all of a sudden, something like that can cause that bit of confusion, leave you wondering what to do next, and just generally leave you in a bad spot where the sale might not be the lottery ticket you hoped for.
Yeah. So I love how you're saying that, because at the end of the day, knowing that it's not if it fails, it's the same concept as talking about a Federal Pacific panel. It's not if it's going to fail. We know it's going to. It's just when will it fail? And how much are you willing to risk when it does?
Yeah.
Are you willing to show up without a presentation? Are you willing to show up without a charge tool? Or are you willing to take the barest minimum action to make sure that you prevent that outcome?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All-star action. Do you got another one?
I got another one for us.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. The all-star action is not only making sure that you have your tablet synced to a cloud account, but that same cloud account is synced to your phone. Now, the reason why is I can tell you a very, very specific situation to where all 3 steps were required to make a sale. I remember I was driving to a call in New Paltz. So for any of our fellow New Yorkers, you know where I'm talking about. It is a far off cow country area sometimes. So we went there, and the first thing that ended up happening was I found that my tablet was dead. Not a problem. Okay. So I had it connected and I was ready to go. So the charger is plugging in my lap and it's connected to the tablet and it's good. But for some reason, and I do not know why I did this, it could have been nerves, it could have been whatever, I accidentally deleted the presentation. I don't know how I did it, but like I had it without the prices, but the number that I had with prices was gone. So what I did was I had it on my phone, which was synced to the cloud. Because we had no cell service in the area, I could plug into his Wi-Fi off of it. And then I was able to access the presentation, and I was able to have the numbers and just type it in and then screenshot it again. It was all there. It was handled. If I didn't, he bought a top ticket item, I remember.
Nice. Well done.
So the thing was, though, is if I didn't have that prepared, I would have driven an hour and change. I would have not had my tablet, or I would have asked for a charger. And then after I even charged it, I would have been like, I'm sorry, man. I don't know what happened to the presentation. I'll just have to email back to you and I'm done. And thanks for wasting my time and yours, right?
Yeah. Not good. Not good. Well, Joe, I'm glad you had a great outcome there. I think that's an awesome all-star action. So we got having the universal cord to make sure that you can charge, and we've got having the iCloud linked up. Using the notes section, avoiding some of the more complex, more robust, and fancy shit, just like we do on this podcast when we join you guys 5 days a week here in the trenches, behind the windshield of the van with you to help motivate and influence you to master sales, simplify pricing, and deliver premium level electrical service. I'm Clay Newmeyer. This is Joe Lucani. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow. Hump Day, Wednesday. Let's go.
I love it. Talk to y'all soon.